All righty. So first and foremost, we got to make sure that everybody is watching Colorado State Rams play Virginia tomorrow night. That's the first 4 game, and they've had a great season. Isaiah Stevens, every single game is potentially his last. Probably one of the greatest players of CSU basketball all time. Statistically speaking, is the greatest player that has come through CSU's doors. So if you have the opportunity to watch greatness, watch CSU tomorrow. I believe it's 7:00. And they're playing Virginia. So go Rams. But we are live in Fort Collins, where we come to you every Monday at 12 p.m. And today is going to be a little bit of a special segment, because there was some big news in all the land, at least across the United States, that the NAR settlement, which $400 million settlement, but then additionally some rule changes that took place, and how that might impact the real estate market in general, but also specifically Fort Collins, because one of the things that Fort Collins has is an affordable housing issue. Across the United States, housing is not cheap, it's not inexpensive. And does this impact it positively, negatively, or a nothing burger? And we'll give some opinions on that moving forward. But speaking about real estate, man, I talked about it last week. Again, the last thing I would ever want to be in real estate is a developer. And this Union Park off of basically Horsetooth and Harmony off of Ziegler is another example of why I would never want to be a part of development. The timeline that Landmark has been doing this project and having to go through neighborhood meetings and appeals, and then in front of the city, planning and zoning, get approval, and now an appeal to go to city council, have to sit in front of them. The delays, the changes they've had to make throughout the entire project is, again, another reason why I would have zero interest in being a developer. But that being said, 600 houses, whether that's townhomes, condos, more kind of multifamily type housing is going to be at Union Park. But there's a coalition of about 500 neighbors is what it sounds like, or at least what the article suggested, that they do have attorneys that have filed an appeal and are going to basically put Landmark in front of city council to suggest that they should be able to go forward with this development. But as we saw with the Sanctuary at the Greens, even after city council said yes, this group at Sanctuary at the Greens said no, we're going to push even harder and lawsuits, and that's still not even close to being done. So, man, develop in Fort Collins. Speaking about housing affordability, these are issues that aren't helping that by any means, because at a 0.5% growth rate in the city of Fort Collins, at 180,000 people, that's still 9,000 extra people a year that we have to house. And if we are not building, houses to provide those, there are people coming into this community with big dollars, and when they see a $2 million price tag, they shrug their shoulders. I'm born and raised here in Fort Collins, and when I see $2 million, I say, well, that's a mortgage that I don't want to have. So just all that being said, I know a few people in English Ranch, and they are not excited about that development. They're not excited about where the street light's going to be. I think there are some things that can happen. I think ultimately this project does move forward. It's just going to be, who kind of wins. Right now, they're talking about whether they should have a street connection or just a bike path and pedestrian path until the plot of land between basically Landmark and English Ranch is developed, and then fully have it connected. But it's definitely a potential for delays, and all delays mean to me and a developer, from my understanding, is money. So, man, I just would not want to Ty, you want to be in the live video, bro? I mean, I'm all about you coming in the live video. What you want to do? What you want to talk about? I mean, let's bring you in. But otherwise, let's see here. The next thing on tap is, I thought this was kind of interesting. Governor Polis talked about when we could see a front range rail system, and it could be as early as 3 years. Bring Ty on. I like it. Great, fast recap. Let's see here. Governor Polis is talking about 3 years potentially for the front range rail system. And there's going to be a, multi company agreement across the board to use the infrastructure that's currently there to then add There you go. I thought that maybe it was the wrong button. I was gonna let you in, Ty. I'm all about coming. You're gonna come on the podcast sooner than later. Ty Fulcher, owner of Social, the best bar speakeasy in America that we happen to have in Fort Collins. So shout out Social and Ty. Great company, great owner, good values. Love to have him watching and love to be a patron of his speakeasy. So I don't know. I mean, I know the interesting thing, I mean, having a rail system that connects Fort Collins to Colorado Springs, we took that. We were down in Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, which if you haven't been in Colorado Springs, is a phenomenal, smaller, more intimate zoo along kind of the mountains edge, and you're kind of traversing back and forth, seeing different animals, and kids got to feed the rhinos and giraffes. Saw the hippos being fed. It was pretty cool. But I mean, the ability to potentially avoid all of that traffic, not have to be stressed out driving, because I don't know, maybe I'm getting older, balder, all that good stuff. But as I'm driving, I just don't like being on I-25, and maybe I go back and forth to Colorado Springs more if there is that front range rail system, and maybe it's faster. So I think it's something that's interesting. I'll be interested to see if it ever actually comes to fruition. Let's see here. Livermore, not going to get a character plan. There was with the discussion of the Glade Reservoir, we talked about it a little bit last week, but essentially there were some community members that came to the forefront, and there's funds within Lamier County to help communities build these character plans. Whereas, City of Fort Collins has all of the sales tax and resources and revenue to be able to build these master plans, the multi-modes transportation plan, carbons plan, all these different plans that cost lots of money. They're specifically talking about a feasibility study for pickleball in Fort Collins. For just the feasibility study would be $40,000, which, a small community like Livermore, where revenues I was just looking at today, the Livermore School and Red Feather School, they have 38 kids in the entire school, K through 5. So it kind of could tell you right there how much revenue this smaller community is generating, which would then need help from Lamier County. But there was enough kind of opposition and desire to not put these together that Lamier County said, no, we are not going to build a character plan for you, Livermore, at this time. And part of that was some commercial, short-term rentals, housing, and different things that are, I think, important to understand how you want to build your community and really put some guiding principles along how you want to be built out, which I believe is probably one of the most important things that identifies Fort Collins. Our city plan in Fort Collins is beautiful. I think we've got industrial on the northeast side of Fort Collins off of Mulberry. We've got two really heavy commercial arteries along US 287, College Avenue, and Harmony Road. And then we have neighborhood centers, but then we have residential backed off of there, schools, office, downtown. I just think that our city plan layout is gorgeous. It's beautiful. And then I know I hit on them, but I feel like sometimes deservedly so. Loveland has a very unique city plan, and you could have industrial right next to a house, right next to an office building, right next to a restaurant. And I think that Loveland is doing a lot of great things with like the redevelopment of their downtown off of 4th Street and then East Loveland, I-25 and McQuinney's, Centerra South, Northwest Loveland, big fan of that. But I think city plan is very important and being very intentional about how you build. So obviously Livermore, tiny, the Forks, but it could be an instrumental commercial corridor if the Glade Reservoir, it sounds like more like when the Glade Reservoir gets built. And so that being said, I think those are important to lay out and understand, how do we want our city to look and feel and moving forward? Because this is kind of something you build this building and it's up for the next 200, 300, 400 years, whatever that might be. So being very intentional of that is important. Speaking of which, Planet Fitness is going to make their foray into Fort Collins and take over the old Big Lots, about 30,000 square feet. They're going to do a $1.1 million build out of that area, of that building, which is great because honestly, you get like Halloween spirit that we went through there, that kind of parking lot. We go to Garbanzo Bean a bunch, which Garbanzo Bean's another conversation for another day. It's kind of gone downhill. I'm all about Cava these days. If you haven't been to Cava, go check it out. But that parking lot, with what's it called? Buy Again Baby. Bed Bath & Beyond. They closed down. So that kind of is a little bit of a little ghost towny right now. But Planet Fitness coming in there. They're going to open up potentially at the end of 2024. They've already submitted plans. $10 a month, Planet Fitness. I was talking recently with some people at Fort Collins Club, Genesis South. They're going to go through this big renovation, and Fort Collins Club Midtown Genesis is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's well maintained. There's shit that's broken, of course, tons of bikes that are broken, treadmills, and I think they need to fix those types of things. And then additionally, Genesis South is going through a big renovation, or will be going through a big renovation sooner than later, and it needs it. The bathrooms are tired. The facility is tired. I remember when I was growing up that Miramont was kind of the bright new shiny toy, and it was gorgeous. But it's crazy how 20 years people using your equipment, machinery on a daily basis, probably pretty rough, can do a number on it. So all that being said, we're paying pretty substantial dollars. For my family is about $175 per month. And we do also pay for $40 a month for childcare, because it's awesome. 2 hours of childcare at Miramont every day of the week. But for $10 a person at Planet Fitness for a brand new facility, there's going to be plenty of people who look at that, crunch, choose all these alternative options. So hopefully Genesis steps up their game. But regardless, it's nice to see activity in that parking lot, and potentially being, the max transit could be used a little bit more, all that good stuff. Okay, so there's two things that are happening with Fort Collins right now. There's currently Fort Collins is up for the best town square in the United States. There's 10 options. Maybe it's 20 options. And Fort Collins is one of them. Currently, as of this morning when I voted, they are the number one town square based off of votes. You could vote every, 12 hours if you wanted. I'm not doing that, but you could vote every 12 hours. But recently, not too long ago, Fort Collins was ranked or voted number 4 best beer city in America. So, we talk about a lot of different things. I read an article this morning on CNN, and it was talking about how cities and communities are attracting people to move there. I think city council would get blown out of the water if they even discussed providing incentives for people to move here, because they're like, we already have all the incentives in the world. We don't need more necessarily. People are coming here in droves. And so we don't need to help people get here. But there were a lot of different little communities that are offering like $15,000 cash packages to come move there. And, for 1 year, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Topeka, Kansas, places in New York, the state of Alaska, which only has 700,000 people, parts of Arkansas and Alabama. And I'm like, man, I'm not interested in moving there, but it is an interesting deal. And I know that's same with like a lot of different countries. Like one country, to become a citizen, I think it was Anguilla. My mom was saying that all you have to do is buy a house, and I think be there for a year, and you become a citizen of that country. And, we're fortunate that we live in Fort Collins, city of Fort Collins, where our city sales tax, which the sales tax numbers came out for January, or maybe it was February or January, just recently. And we're up, tremendously because we added a 50-cent sales tax. So our revenues are up huge. And we then also have the implicit growth that we've seen 0.5 to 1.5% over the last many years. But articles like this, best beer city in the world, number 4 beer city in the United States, then best town square in the United States, having those votes. And I'm going to do a video of the best town square, kind of follow up, because I worked down there for a decade, overlooked the square for, 6 years, saw some of its transformations, being an old town square for so long. But it's pretty amazing. So anyways, 4th best beer city in the United States. So good job, Fort Collins. Lamier County grants neighbor to neighbor $275,000 of rental assistance. based off of, I'm going to screw it up, the American Recovery Act, ARPA funds. There we go. I'm not bad. ARPA funds. There was 20 million given out over since 2021, and that was $20 million given out for rental assistance and helping. And we just received $275,000. I think they're helping out. Gosh, man, they suggest that 47% of households in Fort Collins are rentals. And there's a decent amount. I can't remember off the top of how many households need some rental help right now, but hopefully that helps. We have one of our rentals right now. We have one of our tenants right now that are needing some rental assistance, and hopefully they can get it. We have filed for eviction because that's just kind of the part of the process. Otherwise, a lot of our renters are doing well, but Lamier County supporting some of these funds is definitely important. Rents are not going down. Ty just asked, how are your tenants responding to the triple net increases from your property taxes? I mean, I would have to guess no one enjoys getting an increased bill, but ultimately it's kind of a price to pay. And Ty, I was just talking recently about Old Town Fort Collins, and I think, you guys specifically, I won't go into details necessarily, but, having a long-term lease and seeing all of that development that's happening in and around Fort Collins, and really even the land use code that if ever gets changed, the density that they want to see downtown with the public transportation. I don't have the exact numbers, but rather than 5,000 people walking in front of your store on a daily basis, soon enough, there's going to be 10,000 people with really what they want to see downtown and the development and the densification of that. So, I mean, if you have a long-term lease, it's definitely a headache, but you're going to see people and foot traffic increase downtown based off of what everyone's seeing. And so if you have a long-term lease that you can lock in some of those escalations, it's going to be a feast for those folks that have a good lease in place downtown. But triple nets, insurance that's going to be coming your way as far as an increase, it's part of it. And there's nothing that's getting cheaper, that's for sure. Not on the residential side and not on the commercial side for sure. City of Fort Collins is going to have a special meeting today, actually at 5 p.m. And we are coincidentally talking with the city manager at 3 p.m. on our podcast, which I'm super excited for that to come out because I think she's doing a great job. Kelly DiMartino, one of the highest paid, I think the highest paid person in City of Fort Collins, the government. She's going to be on and she's going to talk about all things Fort Collins land use code. We're excited to talk with her, but there's going to be a special meeting today with City Council that are going to discuss the options of limiting public input, public comment. And additionally, they're going to be talking about being able to call a meeting and move to an offsite and only allow people to talk about what's on the agenda. I've been watching City Council for the last couple of years regularly, and some of these public comments will last 2-3 hours, and some of it's not on the city agenda. And, not to say that it's not important because, ultimately, city public needs to be able to input what's important to them. But recently, if you guys haven't been watching, there was a protest at City Fort Collins 2 weeks ago, and folks glued their hands, weren't allowing City Fort Collins to talk. And Jenny Arndt, I believe, she's just a great mayor. I think level-headed, calm, easy demeanor, called the meeting real quick, just called it off, and just, is playing by the rules, saying, hey, if you want to talk, you can talk, but you can't interrupt others' ability to talk and allow City of Fort Collins to govern. And that's super important is, and one of the things that Jenny talked about is like, man, after 3 hours, it is exhausting. And then you're expecting us to come and make really important decisions for the City of Fort Collins with, a clean head, a clear head. I mean, this is starting to talk the business portion of City Council at 10 o'clock. And so they're kind of talking about maybe they're going to flip that a little bit to where public comment can go indefinitely after the business portion, or they can talk indefinitely about agenda items specifically related. So that's going to be a special session tonight at 5 o'clock where they're going to vote. And then if it gets approved, a second reading will then take place and potentially be approved on second reading April 2nd, and then come into effect April, like the following week. So definitely something interesting. I'll chat with Kelly about it today. But, I think City of Fort Collins, city council members, I would never, I shouldn't say never, but I don't think I would ever get involved with government. It's just, it's a huge time commitment every Tuesday night, tons of items that you don't have any clue about that you're expected to read these 180 page packets, 200, 300, 400 page packets, and come to the meeting well prepared. And I think a lot of our city council members do that. But dang, and then on top of that, you have to, allow public comment that can go for 3-4 hours. It's crazy. I don't think suppressing public comment or speech is important or is the right way. But I think how they're doing it is saying, hey, we're going to limit people to 1 hour, possibly limit what they can talk about. But that will be talked about and voted on tonight at 5 p.m. in a special session. Now, if you came here to listen and talk about the National Association of Realtors settlement that came out in last Friday, March 15th, huge articles, Fox, CNN, CNBC, all these different outlets that were discussing, this settlement that had a financial component, but also a kind of a rule change component. The financial component was $400 million to be paid out essentially over 4 years. And the lawyer's portion of this, by the way, is expected to be around $200 million. In fact, within the actual settlement, which is 110 pages, immediately if this is approved, there's like a significant amount of money, millions of dollars, that has to be submitted into an escrow account. And then the lawyers can withdraw $5 million right away to pay for their services. I'm sure they've been working for free for the last 4 or 5 years as this kind of has been going on, but they're going to get paid and paid handsomely. And it'll be interesting to see how the real estate world responds to it. So that's the financial portion of it. As a realtor and as a member of the National Association of Realtors, it'll be interesting to see what they do with member dues and potentially a special assessment, suggesting that, hey, we need to pay this off. And for the next 4 years, we're going to put your dues from, let's just say, $1,000 a year to $1,500 a year. And we'll see what their 1.5 million membership number goes to. It's one of the largest trade associations. I think it's the largest trade association in the United States, if not world, at 1.5 million members. So that will be interesting. A lot of this is going to be played out over the very many next months and years. So a lot of this is just starting to be kind of unraveled as far as what is going to happen. Now, the rules portion is definitely something that's interesting. You guys are probably watching and paying attention, and like the headlines suggest the 6% commission is going away and allowing for negotiation. Well, I've been in this business now for over a decade, and I don't think, maybe I did at the very beginning because maybe I didn't have the training necessarily, but maybe at the very beginning I would say, buyer's agents, you're not paying a commission, it's free. I don't think I did, but I don't want to make that promise because it's been a long time since I've been in the industry. But essentially the buyer was paying for the buyer's agent's commissions via paying for the price of the home and financing and all that good stuff. So the listing agent would charge, and negotiate with their seller a commission, let's just say 6%, and then offer within that same listing agreement, offer a buyer's agent or a transaction broker a co-op fee of typically half of that. So 2.5% or 3%. And for the longest time, this was kind of like hidden from the public. There was actually a book called Freakonomics, and I don't know when I read it, but it was over a decade ago. And they compared real estate agents with the Ku Klux Klan. And their kind of reasoning behind this was that the Ku Klux Klan was all about brotherhood and secrecy and passwords and all this stuff that the public did not know, but the members did. And they were saying that the real estate association, realtors, real estate agents, National Association of Realtors, were the same thing, this brotherhood and sisterhood that knew a lot of information. Now, as Zillow has come out and Realtor.com, it used to be that really only the real estate agents knew the listings and had listing books. That is before my time. But I can say that it used to be even worse. that the only people who knew what houses were on the market even were real estate agents. And then technology happened and Zillow came, realtor.com came, and more houses came on the market, and visual syndications, aggregations of listings were a thing, and the public could then go and see what listings were available. But commissions weren't until about a year ago, where there was a ruling that said, hey, we are going to disclose to the public what the buyer's agent's commission was. And I thought that was a great idea, a great thing, because I talked with my team about how I believe there could be some agents maybe who don't do a lot of deals in a year's time. And if they're showing 3 houses and one's offering 3%, one's offering 2.8%, and one's offering 2.5%, but a buyer did not know that, and the agent is representing, hey, you should definitely buy this house. It's in a better location, better neighborhood. The fixtures are better upgrades and all that good stuff. And then the backyard is phenomenal. But really the buyer's like, well, I agree with that, but maybe I like the price here a little bit better, or I like these amenities that are like schools better than whatever. But hey, you're the professional. I'm going to follow what you say, and I'm going to go ahead and buy this house, not knowing that this one was the one that was offering 3%. And so there was some secrecy, but as of a year ago, there was this transparency that allowed for brokerage commissions for buyers to be seen by the public, which I thought was great, because at that point, then if I was in that same conversation, I would have questions if I was a buyer, like, no. And maybe as a buyer's agent, you would feel a little bit more obligation to be truthful, which hopefully you always are, but maybe not. Maybe, again, if they're only selling 2 or 3 houses, that 0.5% to 0.2% could make a lot of difference in these people's lives. But there was some transparency. Now, with the projected rule changes, what they are saying is that no longer can listing agents market on the MLS or any other aggregate site, Zillow, whatever, what they are going to be paying or willing to pay the buyer's agent. So it'll be up to the buyer's agent to, if they're interested in showing or presenting an offer on a house, to then inquire about what that commission is directly to that listing agent, if anything. And that's super interesting. And to me, goes a little bit backwards. I'd rather the transparency, a pre-negotiated commission, whatever that might be. And as a buyer's agent, you're talking to your buyer and saying, hey, like, I'm negotiating, my fee is negotiable. We can negotiate it on a contract and all of this conversation. And if there's room, like, I'll give a quick example of what we did. We had a client that went under contract, and it was $980,000. We offered $920. They offered $970, $945, $970. We had this negotiation going on, and then he came to me and said, hey, I think this is where you should take off $2,500 of your commission to get the deal done. And I was like, done. Let's do this. Let's get the deal done. So I think it's important, and he's a savvy buyer. And so I think it's important for buyers to know that those commissions are negotiable, but it's also important for buyers agents to know what that agent might be getting paid, so that there is some negotiation going on. And I feel like this is going a little bit backwards, saying, hey, we're not going to be marketing. And that could mean that, hey, listing agents maybe are offering $0 to buyer's agents. Maybe they're offering 1%, 2%, 3%. Ultimately, that's a conversation between the listing agent and the seller of what do they think is important to get the house sold. What would attract a buyer? And that's a conversation they're going to have. Alrighty. Additionally, and I think this is great, before a buyer's agent can show a client homes, they must have a buyer agency agreement in place, essentially a contract in place that allows them to have then negotiated. And it can't be ambiguous. It has to be a stated fee, whether that's a percent, a flat fee, with their buyers with their buyers of what and how they're going to get paid prior to them showing homes even. And that's going to be required. So if somebody were to call me today, well, now we can talk about when this all the time is going to take place. But if somebody were to call me today and say, hey, I want to see a house, I would have to then, essentially have my buyer agency consultant with them and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'll provide. It's essentially, you could look at how you're going to do it, whether it's going to be a month, trial period, so to speak, or 6-month contract, and discuss how you get paid. Say, hey, I'm going to require a success fee of 2.5%. And if the listing agent doesn't pay that, if they're offering 2%, you will be responsible for bringing a 0.5% to pay our difference. That would be required prior to showing any other houses. And I don't mind that at all. I think that's a good thing. I think having those conversations, transparency up front, I think it could put some buyers on edge a little bit of like, I don't want to sign a contract. And so those are where you might have, like I said, a month-long contract to begin with. And then if the relationship forms and solidifies at that time, extending it to 6 months or whatever that contract period might be. All right. Now, there's other things that are important. Those are really the two biggest ones, is to not prohibit MLSs from marketing buyer agent cooperating fee splits across the board, requiring a buyer agency agreement to be signed before showing any houses. Now, I think some of the interesting things that will happen on this is a lot of things. I think listing agents will play a huge role in how this all works out, because most agents represent both buyers and sellers. And so I think listing agents will suggest that, hey, we still want to market and allow this buyer to buy this house. Because let's say that buyer agency signed at 2.5%, but the listing agent is offering 2%. And the buyer just doesn't have the additional funds to cover that 0.5%. Will that offer go in and that house get sold for a 0.5% discrepancy? If we're talking $900,000, that could be $4,500. And while it's not insignificant, is it enough not to get a deal done? And so these are all kind of things that are going to have to play out over the next coming months, and how people are going to basically build their business around this. And, this is all projected to take place or be approved by the courts, because essentially it has to go through the court system and get approved. This is the settlement agreement, but it has to get formally approved. And they're projecting that this takes place mid-July. Now, if it takes place in mid-July, there's still a lot of people who are going to be working and closing deals between now and then. And then from July forward, man, it will be super interesting as far as how the industry moves forward, because there could be discount buyers. There could be buyers who go unrepresented because they can't afford to pay a buyer agency. And that's kind of scary, because I think having a buyer agent is imperative. Somebody who knows what the market's doing, somebody who understands, hey, how much can we negotiate on inspections, what the market's doing, the value difference between cash and financing, and a quick close versus an extended close, having the resources to negotiate or the relationships to negotiate with listings. But it's all going to be fluid moving forward. And so this is really just the iceberg's, tip as far as here's what's happening. A financial settlement, the buyer agency agreement before any showings, no marketing of agent splits. And, that's really kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But it also talks about how potentially the Department of Justice, if they come in, that could overrule things. But this is going to be how a lot of MLSs and brokerages are going to have to operate moving forward. There is going to be more transparency with buyer agencies and buyers. I think on the side of how we conduct our business and a formal conversation at the beginning versus somewhere down the road. I think listing agents and their sellers are going to have to see what the market will bear as far as, hey, ultimately, yes, we want to net you the best we can absolutely net you, but at what cost? And how do we do that? And is it going to be 5%? Is it going to be 6%? Is it going to be 4%? I think the market will definitely see dramatic changes in the coming months with these rule changes, but it's still to be fleshed out quite a bit. I don't see any questions, but definitely feel free to ask. It's a 108-page document. Just read through it, over the weekend, and a lot of the changes are suggested to take place mid-July. But I think it's something that everyone needs to be educated on and have discussions with if you're actively in the market. If you're a buyer of mine or a seller and this doesn't make sense. I've been sending some videos out to clients to kind of discuss it high level. And then from there, questions we can absolutely jump on and discuss, because I think it's important to know. But a lot of, not misinformation per se, but I would say a lot of radical information is out there because, hey, that's what sells. That's the headlines that sells. All right, things to do in the coming week. Let's see here. Ignite Hope Benefit Concert at the Coast on March 22nd, 6 to 9 p.m. And essentially, bring awareness and funds for anti-human trafficking benefit concert and silent auction. One of the things that I think makes Fort Collins great and amazing is volunteers. And there's an opportunity for you to go volunteer event on the Fort Collins Municipal Railway Trolley Depot, which is at 1501 West Oak Street on April 20th, 1 to 2 p.m. So if you're looking to get involved and volunteer between, essentially, May through September season, this would be a great opportunity for you to go get information on how and where you can volunteer. So we are at the end of our live for today. Very important things that are going on. I'm excited to talk to my team about the National Association of Realtors settlement case, as well as talking with Kelly DiMartino tonight for our podcast. If you haven't watched the Fort Collins Fellows podcast or listened to it, some great information about Fort Collins. And then additionally, while this was a little bit real estate heavy, I think it's important because it's also could impact the Fort Collins market. But we do have also a dedicated real estate channel. That's just my name, Patrick Sukup, real estate professional, that we are building. And so you can go subscribe there if you want more focused real estate information. But I appreciate you guys joining me each week. Never hesitate to reach out, send me a DM, send me a text, give me a call, especially if you're considering relocating to Northern Colorado. Would love to help you. We have dialed in our system. So give us a call, text, or email. And until next week, have a great day.